Welcome to this talk on the theme of human rights are animal rights, or it could have equally be titled Animal Rights are Human Rights. I say this because, to me, speciesism is analogous to homophobia, racism, and misogyny. They are different forms of oppression and exploitation, and they share a common thread of causing suffering. So my starting point is very simple. Since we humans are an animal species, it's obvious that human rights are a form of animal rights, and that animal rights include, or should include, the human species. Sadly, not everyone sees it this way. Many people view humans and other animals as totally distinct, drawing a clear, sharp line between animal rights and human rights. I'm often challenged, why do I, as a human rights campaigner, feel so passionately about animal rights as well? But it's very simple. Sentience is the bond that unites all animal species, human and non-human. I accept our shared animalism and advocate our shared claim to be spared suffering and accorded inalienable rights. It's true that other animals are less intelligent than humans. They lack our mental, physical skills and our capacity for culture and conscience. That's true. Many instances we find that people argue that this difference is an excuse or justification for treating animals less well. I don't buy that. I don't think difference is a justification for abuse. In the same way that we do not sanction the abuse of humans, such as babies or people with mental disabilities who lack highly developed human capacities, nor should we understand or accept the abuse of animals. We acknowledge that we have a special responsibility to protect weaker, more vulnerable humans. That's right, that's proper. But surely the same reasoning also applies to other weaker, more vulnerable thinking, feeling creatures. There is, in my moral universe, no great ethical gulf between the abuse of human and non-human animals, or between our duty of compassion towards other humans and towards other animal species. Indeed, I see a link between the oppression of non-human animals and the oppression of human beings. The oppression of human beings, whether it be because of their nationality, race, gender, faith or non-faith, political beliefs, disability, sexual orientation, and gender identity. The different forms of human and other animal oppression are interconnected. They are based on a similar abuse of power and a similar infliction of harm and suffering. They cannot, in any circumstances, be fully understood separately from one another. Why do I say this? It's because how we mistreat animals parallels how we mistreat people. There is a connection. And in my opinion, cruelty is barbarism, whether it's inflicted on other humans or on other animal species. So in my world, the campaigns for animal rights and human rights share the same fundamental aim. They share the aim of a world without oppression and suffering, a world based on love, kindness, and compassion. In contrast, speciesism is the belief and practice of human supremacism. And from that flows the justification that other animal species can be legitimately abused and exploited. Speciesism is a form of prejudice, discrimination, and often violence in favor of human beings against other animal species. And it variously involves the exploitation, incarceration, mistreatment, or killing of other animals by humans. This humans first ideology of speciesism is analogous to homophobia, racism, and misogyny. It's a form of analogous of prejudice, domination, and oppression. It's incompatible with a humane, civilized society. Now, if you take the standpoint that we humans are an animal species, if you are cognizant of the fact that we know all about pain and suffering, you have to ask yourself, why do so many people hold high-handed attitudes towards other animals and accept their abuse in medical laboratories, farms, zoos, circuses, and sports events? It doesn't follow that our highly sophisticated intelligence and our level of material development gives us the right to lord it over other species. Just because we have the capacity to do so does not mean that we should. On the contrary, our brain power, education, and conscience give us a special responsibility of stewardship towards the earth and all its living beings. My thinking on these issues has been very much influenced by the Australian philosopher Peter Singer and his groundbreaking book, Animal Liberation. In my mind, it is one of the most important books of the last 100 years. It expands our moral horizons beyond our own species and is thereby a major evolution in ethics. Peter Singer, of course, is not the only great writer on animal rights and liberation. There are many others as well, and they all share the fundamental basic principle that ethics in the modern age needs to expand to this new dimension of animal rights and liberation. If we look over the course of human history, our ethical understanding has progressively expanded from the family, the tribe, and the clan. That was initially the limit of people's moral horizons. They thought rights only were entitled to those within the family, the clan, or the tribe. And then over time, that was expanded to include particular religious and political communities, to the nation, and with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to the whole of humankind. So I see it as the next logical step to extend these same ethical considerations to other sentient beings. The abuse of animals is rooted in a form of human chauvinism. A form of human chauvinism that views non-sentient beings as, quote, other. This othering mindset allows many people to come up with the excuse that they can look down on and mistreat other animals, including to insult them, exploit, abuse, dominate, and even kill these other beings. So many people stop thinking of other animals as living, thinking, feeling creatures. Species difference and inferiority becomes a rationale for the infliction of suffering. I don't buy that. I can't accept it. To me, anti-animal prejudice runs really, really deep in everyday life and language. Bigots often disparage other people with speciesist epithets. They accuse them of acting, quote, like a beast, or behaving, quote, worse than an animal. This bigotry echoes the vile insults that black people are, quote, savages, that women are, quote, bitches, and that LGBT people are, quote, perverts. This is the language of oppression, a language we have to challenge, and ideas behind that language which we have to overcome. There are very controversial, but I think true parallels between human and animal slavery. Both involve the similar ownership of other human beings or animals, and the confinement of these humans or animals and their exploitation. So if you think about the images of Africans tethered in a slave ship, they're not that dissimilar from those of farm animals imprisoned in pens and cages. The instruments of restraint used on animals in medical laboratories echo those used on black slaves in the United States prior to the 20th century. It is surely not an accident that some of the greatest anti-slavery campaigners, such as Frederick Douglass and Harriet Beecher Stowe, drew comparisons between animal and human slavery. And their opposition to animal enslavement is shared by modern African American heroes like Dick Gregory and Alice Walker. Indeed, Alice Walker wrote the preface to this book by Marjorie Spiegel, The Dreaded Comparison, Human and Animal Slavery. And in the preface, she writes about, quote, the similarities between the enslavement of black people in the past, and by implication the enslavement of other peoples, and the enslavement of animals, past and present. It is a comparison that, even for those of us who recognize its validity, is a difficult one to face, especially so if we are the descendants of slaves, or of slave owners, or of both. Especially so if we are also responsible in some way for the present treatment of animals. Especially so if we, for instance, participate in or profit from animal research. Beings who loved life and died for our lipstick, lotions, medicines, and so on. Or if we own animals, or if we eat animals, or if we are content to know that animals are shut up safely in zoos. In short, if we are complicit in the enslavement and destruction, to which is to say we are at this juncture in history the master. Alice Walker goes on to say that it needs to be pointed out, quote, the dreaded comparison between the pain felt by human animals who are abused and the pain felt by non-human animals who are abused, and recognizing it as the same pain. The animals of the world exist for their own reasons. They were not made for humans any more than black people were made for whites or women for men. Powerful words by Alice Walker in a preface to The Dreaded Comparison. So before we can liberate the millions of oppressed humans and the billions of exploited animals, we first need to free our minds. That means starting to think in a new way, to consciously eliminate the mentality of subjugation and entitlement that allows us to passively acquiesce or, even worse, actively participate in the cycle of abuse against other sentient beings, human and non-human. For me, animal liberation is in the same ethical tradition as women's, black, and LGBT liberation. It's about ending the suffering that flows from a supremacist mindset and from power relations of domination. Surely, in the 21st century, the time has come to emancipate non-human animals, just like we previously emancipated humans through abolishing slavery, male-only suffrage, and anti-LGBT laws. We have, I believe, a moral duty to stop abusing other animal species. They aren't really that different from us humans. Indeed, many vertebrates share much of our DNA and our capacity for thought, feelings, emotions, memory, sociability, language, altruism, and empathy. We need to recognize and embrace our common animalism. If we did that, the excuses and rationalizations for treating other species badly would fall away. It's time for human and animal liberation. Thank you.